Okay, so you've just let me know that there is hope to do something within the States. What can Arab...
within Ireland. I mean, Ireland isn't the United States, but it's part of the European Union. The European Union is a powerful entity. It's comparable to the United States in anything but military force. It has real interests in the Mediterranean region, including the Middle East, the Near East region. It could take an independent stance. And if so, that would have a big effect on what Washington decides to do. Washington cannot confront the European Union on these issues. If the European chooses to take the roughly Tony Blair position, that we follow along politely behind whatever you, the master, say, well, fine, then the master will continue to do what it wants. But that's not a law of nature, and certainly the people of Europe, including the people of Ireland, can have an influence on whether that continues. I mean, take, say, water. Right now there's, in fact, I happened to read in the Irish Times this morning a letter about the fact that Israel's denying water to the people of the West Bank. It destroys wells, prevents water pipes from being built. It's using West Bank water. Most of the water in that region happens to be in an aquifer which is right under the West Bank, the part that Israel's intending to annex. That's why that separation wall is there. One of the reasons is to ensure that the water resources end up in Israel. Well, who's paying for that? Amnesty International just put out a report on it. And they pointed out that European taxpayers are the ones who are paying for it. The way it works is European taxpayers are funding the Palestinian Authority, and the cost of trying to ensure that people have enough water to stay alive falls on the European taxpayer. And the reason that cost is high is because Israel's taking all the water and preventing them from getting it. So all of this goes straight back to the European taxpayer, who can refuse. Now, they shouldn't refuse by saying, we won't give you the water. They should refuse by saying, we will act to prevent Israel from stealing your water, the way the United States wants them to.
Okay, so within Europe, this is possible. The Arab world itself, the youth, you know, I mean, I came across a book. It's called Real Bad Arabs. It's this guy who...
Oh, Jack Shaheen, yeah.
Yeah, he looked at over a thousand movies, going back to the 100 years about how Arabs are vilified in the movies.
Look, you can go back to the Crusades. You know, this is European propaganda for as far back as you want to go.
Right. So there is enough money for the Arabic. I mean, the question is, what can Arabs do within the Arabic world? And then also, there is enough money for, you know, from Arabs to fund films in Hollywood. You know, get George Clooney or Julia Roberts to be in a film which is not anti...
It could. First of all, in the Arab world, they're living under brutal dictatorships. And Obama backs the dictatorships, very, very openly, in fact. So, for example, huge enthusiasm about Obama's speech in Cairo, reaching out to the Arab world and so on. Actually, if you look at the speech, it was almost entirely vacuous, but said nicely, so feel good. He was asked by the press what he thinks about the Mubarak government. The Mubarak government is one of the most brutal, vicious dictatorships in the Arab world. And his answer was, I don't like to call folks names. Okay. Now, when a politician uses the word folks, you know that the next line is going to be a lie. Nobody calls people folks unless you're trying to lay the basis for a lie. So I don't like to call folks names, so I won't say that he's a dictator. I know he's keeping a stable country and he's very helpful. That's telling Mubarak, you know, go ahead and torture as many people as you like. You know, send your secret police to crush any, it's public police, not very secret, to crush any demonstration, to prevent any dissent, and so on. That's the message from Obama. Well, you know, people in the Arab world have to somehow overthrow their dictatorial regimes. They can't do it with the West supporting the regimes, but there is an interaction. dissenters in the Arab world can reach the population of the United States and can work together to force both the United States and, say, Egypt to permit freedom and democracy. Now, this is not a new problem. You have to understand a little history here.
Sure.
You go back to the 1950s. President Eisenhower discussed with his staff the fact that there's a campaign of hatred against us in the Arab world, not from the governments, they're fine, but from the people. And the National Security Council, the highest planning body, explained the reasons. It said the reasons are that there's a perception in the Arab world, which they said is accurate, that the United States supports brutal and dictatorial regimes and prevents democracy and development, and does so because we want to obtain their oil. Perception's accurate, and that's exactly what we should be doing. So yes, there'll be a campaign of hatred against us, and we count on the dictatorships to repress the population. Well, that's U.S. policy for 50 years. It was British policy before, and it's understandable policy on the part of the imperial states. But it's not a law of nature. Gradually, decolonization took place. It was replaced by other forms of domination, and you have to keep struggling to make progress, and there is progress. Things are better than they were 10 years ago, much better than they were 50 years ago. But it does not happen by itself. It happens by constant, dedicated work, facing a lot of problems. I mean, if you're in Egypt, the problem you face is you're sent to jail and you get tortured. If you do it in, say, the United States, the problem is people scream at you. In fact, they don't even do that anymore. Okay. We have a lot of opportunities, freedom, privilege. The reason we have the freedom and privilege is because our predecessors struggled for it. They were beaten and sent to jail and tortured. Okay, and now we have privilege and freedom to an extent, a large extent, so we can go on. But to say that there's nothing we can do is simply false.
Right.
We have endless opportunities.
You think as a species we're evolving, or just that you think as a species?
As a species we're the same as we were before we left Africa. Yeah, there's no relevant evolution in the last 75,000 years. That's why humans are basically identical. There's extremely little genetic variation. I mean, there's superficial variation, like hair color and things like that. But as far as our, say, cognitive, moral, other capacities are concerned, as far as anyone knows, they're identical. If you take a child from a Stone Age tribe in Amazon, who's never had any contact with the West, you take him to Dublin, let's say, as an infant, he'll grow up to be identical with everyone else in Dublin, meaning we're all fundamentally identical. So there's no evolution. I mean, there's cultural change, but we have the same genes. And we don't, evolution is a slow process. You can't wait for that. But cultural and institutional change happen all the time. It's in our hands. Have to go.
Thank you so much. You've given me so much energy. As I was doing this, trying to prepare for the film, I thought I'll interview certain people and say what I say growing up, and now that, when you said yes, it really surprised me. I didn't set my standards. And
well, these are not the things you're supposed to say. It's a free country, but it's deeply indoctrinated. And that's what education is about. Education indoctrinates you. It makes you think in a particular way. And one of the main purposes of education is to prevent you from seeing what's right in front of your eyes, to make you look around it somehow. And it's done in all kinds of ways. I mean, postmodern nonsense, the doctrines you're taught in economics courses and so on. I mean, it's not a conscious effort to mislead. That's just the way societies work. They work by privileging doctrines and institutions that support power. Yes, not a big surprise.
Thank you so much.